So today on One Scaling, we're joined by Andrew Thomas. Andrew's a director at AJT Business Transformation, which is a UK-based management consultancy helping organizations transform through human-centered leadership and executive coaching. I think it's fair to say Andrew's a certified ILM Level 7 executive coach and mentor that brings over 20 years experience across multiple sectors, including engineering, manufacturing, and operational excellence. And I can say from personal experience, Andrew, from working with you, it was insightful from day one and really impactful. So thank you very much. Appreciate you joining me today and giving me this time.
Always enjoy working with you, Lloyd.
Flattery will get you everywhere. Andrew, I appreciate you having joining me. Like I say, I know AJT was founded on your long and professional relationship with Tarek. Can you give us a bit more about how that relationship formed and how that shaped the business that you created?
Yeah, I think probably about 10, 12 years ago, I came across my colleague Tarek, and we were working for an aerospace and defense company, a global company. And I think we could see that we had similar kind of traits, but we were like co-sympathetic in how we worked. And I really liked the way he worked, his attitude, his professionalism, and I think I'm not quite sure what he saw in video. But we've worked together for on and off. We had 3 or 4 years together at that global aerospace company, and then we went to he kind of headhunted me and took me to the next place, and which really appreciated that. Went to Europe with Tarek, went to Texas with Tarek, all in the operational excellence team, supported him in Germany and in Austin. Yeah, and I think we're very similar ages, but quite different people. So I think that's what's probably kept us going together. And we've always had that like kind of, I'll pick up the phone and even though we're not working together, I'll pick up the phone and see how he is. Yeah, that's a good relationship to have when you're not connected directly by work.
Yes.
So now, like I've been working on my own since November 23, and Tarek's come to the end of his kind of life at this in his current role, and we've decided to hook up, combine his knowledge, combine his skills, and see what's out there and see what we can contribute.
Sounds great. I think the partnerships can be challenging in a sense that if you don't pick the right person, it can be challenging. If you pick somebody that's too similar to you, then you're not getting that kind of other side of the story. And if you're in agreement on everything, you're not being challenged in the right areas. So I think, as you said, those differences between you and Tarek, that sounds like that's the thing that's going to make this partnership stronger.
Yeah, I think so. He's a great guy, and there's certain people when you get to like our age, it's good to have that kind of sanity check where you can pick up the phone and say because and this is a subject that we've discussed before. Leadership can become a very lonely place, and if you've not got that confidant, it can be a really, really lonely place. And sometimes it's just it's great to have someone just to offload on. They might not be able to help you, but the fact that you can offload on them with complete impunity, knowing that it's they're not going to take it anywhere or use it against you. Yeah, I think that's it's a good thing to have.
Absolutely, and I know that was one of the great benefits I got from working with you. In the coaching, obviously, when you worked with us as a transformational coach, but working with you in that one-to-one setting and having somebody that I could speak to, sometimes vent to. Sometimes I would just let off a load of steam for 45 minutes, and then I take some actions. But you're right, having that someone to go to And it doesn't, you don't want it to be your wife at the end of the day coming home with an offloading, so you tend to suppress it. And at work, you can to an extent speak with, if you've got a good manager, you can, to an extent speak with them, but being able to speak freely. And quite often, and what I found is by speaking freely, I would see my own flaws in my own thinking. I would say, and as the words are coming out of my mouth, which I'd been internalizing for quite a while, once I said them out loud, I would be thinking, I'm being pretty unreasonable here. Sometimes.
Yeah. But that's sometimes that's what it takes. I'm working with an ex-colleague again at the moment, and he's very much, he rang me up and he rang me up to vent.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he vented, and we had a few calls, and then in the end he just says, why don't you come and work for me? I'll see if we can get you on, and that was it. And there's a little bit of that relationship still going on, even though I'm working for him. Yeah,
and I think, I said it to you, Andy, when we had our we had our one-to-one sessions. It felt like therapy sometimes. It's very therapeutic having somebody that you can speak with, and especially if that person isn't shy to pull you up when you're kind of being unreasonable or being irrational. I personally, really appreciate that and respected that, and the way that you did it, it was very interesting to me, and I learned a lot about that in how I managed teams then following that. And it wasn't by telling me or telling them, you're being unreasonable or irrational. It was just asking those open-ended questions. And then I would have this light bulb moment that I felt I came up with myself. And then after the call, upon reflection, I was like, oh, I see what he did there. There's a real art in that. Is that something that you've always had as a natural ability to do, is to draw these things out of people, or is that something that you've learned through your education and your study?
I think, Joe, I think I've been coaching for about 25 years. I think I've just not recognized that I've been coaching people. Obviously, as you get a bit older, you become more sympathetic, more aware, more self-aware. And I've always had that coaching mindset, but I think in the last 2 years, when I've actually been physically trying to drill down into the techniques, you become much more aware of the questions that you're asking, and and what the client, needs, kind of thing, or trying to reveal to the client, to himself or herself, their own needs. It's that self-realization. But I think, it's similar to, the conversation we had. It's really, 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 really rewarding, both ways. And I think you're finding this now. It's just is it a new man thing? It's better to talk now, or is it a bit of a realization that we don't really talk? And that's, I've got kind of 3 or 4 colleagues and probably 1 friend, and then a brother who I talk to. You know what I mean? So your field's quite narrow, isn't it? Your field, your scope of kind of friendship and work colleagues is quite small.
Yeah, absolutely. The list you've just mentioned there, I think that's way broader than most people. I certainly, for me, there are a few people that I can call and speak to, honestly and freely, in a professional setting. My lifelong friends don't work in the same kind of field. Back in Wales, my friends are slaughtermen and builders, right? So I can open up to them and talk to them, but they don't understand the context in which I'm trying to, and what I'm experiencing. Then they don't understand the corporate politics and why you can't just speak your mind to that person, and all of the rest of the advice they give me. So I can talk to them, but I don't get the feedback and the understanding that I need. And then in a professional context, I have 2 people ultimately, and you're one of them, Abby, that I could call on. I know I can call on at any time and have that conversation. But I think if you spoke to a lot of leaders, you speak to a lot, maybe you can answer this question rather than me assuming, how many leaders have somebody like that they can actually turn to and actually be honest?
I think very, very few. Yeah, and I don't think, and they're not in the workplace. So when, and you've hit the nail on the head. You try and explain the politics of what you have to do at work to somebody who's not in that situation. It's quite difficult, really, and they won't understand it. And so I'd say, that confidant person is very rare, I think. So I think there's a niche there. You know what I mean? And that's where I want to be placing myself. When I finish actually working, just be full-time coaching.
Yeah, and I think there's huge value in it. And I think, in the corporate role I've been in, they're actively encouraging men to speak more and to speak more freely. Do you feel the stigma around that is perceived internally, or do you think that stigma is real? Because there's a natural concern, when you speak to most men, showing vulnerability and showing your emotions at work. It's difficult. You're expected to maintain this steady neutral position all the time. If you're overly emotional, that's not good. If you're showing vulnerabilities, you feel like you're demonstrating weakness. Is that in my head? Is that my perception, or do you think that stigma is real to an extent?
I think it's much less now in the workplace. Yeah, I mean, you have these mental health first aiders. It's much more at the forefront of organizations thinking. However, it's a very, very personal thing, and to actually go to somebody and say, "Look, I've got a mental problem or a mental block." And there's two sides of it as well, because we can blame everything on ADHD or everybody's got a level of ADHD, and it's just what level do you keep it at, and what level can you function at? But I think everybody's got some kind of, mental.
Yeah, I think I spoke with a psychologist about this actually, a while back, and she was very well respected in her field, and she specialized in autism and ADHD. And that's what she said. She believes that one day, and I don't think this is her theory, but one day there will just be a spectrum, and how that spectrum, and we're all on this spectrum somewhere, with varying degrees of symptoms then, if you like. And they can fluctuate in and out of those symptoms as well, depending on, what you're experiencing at the time and what pressures you're under.
Exactly. It's that situational kind of reaction into whatever situation. I see it in myself, because, I see it in myself, I see it in my daughter, and I see it in my son, but it manifests it in like, and I see it in I see it in my partner as well. That the chimp paradox, that book.
Yeah.
But I think you recommended it to me, and I got about 20 pages to it, and I said, this is John. And I said, you need to read this, John, because it's you. It's like the sky's falling in. It's everything, every situation is flight.
Yeah, exactly that.
But these levels, it'll just be one spectrum, and it's where you are at particular times.
Yeah, I can feel, Andy, from this conversation, already, a lot of your thinking, it feels to me like a lot of your thinking is around that, is human-centered leadership, then, if you like, and the power of reflection. And I think that kind of, for me and the experience I've had with you, that's kind of the core of what you do. And obviously you have all of the other operational improvements and, lean practices, which you're an absolute expert in. There's no shadow of a doubt there. But that human-centric side of it, and enabling people to perform at their best, who will often have lots of skills themselves, but being able to be in the right state of mind at the right time. I think that's invaluable for leaders.
I think so. Coming on this, I made myself some notes and stuff. But we generally, when we talk, we don't have many gaps to it.
No.
Yeah, I think that in that leadership world, you can be a leader. You can be a leader, and you can be a very direct leader. You can be a D style. You know what I mean? And you can know what you want, but ultimately, if combining it with a lean world and a coaching world, the three kind of very independent ways of thinking. Where a leader, wants to motivate you to get to a common goal, and and lean is kind of elimination of waste. To put it in its most basic form. And then coaching is trying to like guide and get feedback and draw that out of people. Three quite independent ways of thinking. But I think to maximize your leadership and the potential of your leadership, there's a mindset that should combine like the lean side, but combine that with a coaching mindset as well. And then that leaders, if you think of it in that way, you become like a self-perpetuating, because there's a level of altruism in there. You know what I mean? You're leading to make people succeed, but in reality, you're leading to make yourself succeed. But because you're coaching, you want other people to succeed, and then they see that you want them to succeed, so they're more reciprocal in the behavior back towards you. So it's like a really nice self-perpetuating kind of philosophy. But you can't be like that all the time. But you've got to set that right environment and, pitch it at the right level, because ultimately, as a leader, you're going to have to make some tough decisions at some point. But if you can get to that mindset where you're more of a coach and you've got that dialogue, you're still moving people to that common goal as a leader, but you're developing them as well. You're giving them a level of trust. I think we talked about this a couple of times, is that level of trust. If you trust people and you allow them to fail, you're allowing them to develop them. So that's a big thing. If you can develop them, that level of trust, and then be there when help's required. You know what I mean? And that help on the lean side might be, go and do a problem solving, doing that. I'll help you if you want. Have you got the tools? I'll show you how to do the tools. I'll show you how to use the tools. That kind of, that kind of framework for me fits, because it engages your workforce. It creates succession planning for you. It integrates you, and it puts you in a place where you can get and receive feedback as well.
Do you know what? You mentioned something then, Andy, that resonated me when we had our coaching session, and it resonates with me now. And it's something that I personally found difficult to begin with. And that was allowing failure and allowing things to fail. And I think most leaders are of the D type, right? And as part of that, naturally competitive. And failure is something that is very difficult for a lot of leaders to accept. And it's something that I do as a parent. As a parent, I have a 17-year-old son, and as he's growing up, I will allow him to have those small failures, because I know that you learn through that. So I allowed it as a parent. When it come down to professionally, I would previously interject before that failure occurred, and then in doing so, I was not only removing the invaluable lesson they would have from that learning, but I was also taking away their autonomy and their freedom, as an employee. Is that something you see commonly with leaders, and allowing that failure and making that okay?
Yeah, I think it's a problem that's out there. You know what I mean? And ultimately it's trust. Yeah. And some people need a bit of hand holding. You know what I mean? So it's how much trust do you give them, and how much time have you got as a leader to give them? But I think that coaching mindset, puts you in a place where I'm here to help you. I'm here to support. I'm here to receive your feedback. But I want you to do this on your own, because what do you think? It's it's that I'm used to running these daily led accountability meetings. Like for the last 15 years, I've been doing them, and it's so easy just to ask the right question, and you can bring a room to complete silence and realization. A room of 20 people by just asking the right question. A group of 20 people, and it might be a simple question. So why is it wrong, or why did you do that, or when just really, really simple questions. Whose responsibility is that then?
Yeah.
Oh, it's me.
And
That's kind of coaching leaders who need a little bit of coaching as well in that environment. There's an open forum. That's why I like that environment. When you get to the top level of running daily accountability meetings, it's very collaborative. Everybody's on board. They know they're accountable. They get there on time. They're there for the business. They're there for the colleagues. And and sometimes you need to just ask the right question, and it's quite humbling, really.
yeah, I've been there. You want the receiving end of those questions, then I'll agree with that for sure. Anyway, one of the things, I don't know if it was in a post you read or in our communication in preparation for this, one of the things you mentioned was, walking the talk.
Yeah.
When it comes to leadership. What do you mean by that?
I think, one of the most satisfying things, my experience, one of the most satisfying things that I can see is when you walk away, when you've done your training, you've done your coaching, you've done a bit of this, done a bit of that, taught people a few tools over a period of time on a site or whatever, and you happen to attend their meeting, and they're doing the do like you've asked them to do. And it's, like, I can't ask somebody to do that I can't do myself. So if safety is number one for me, it's number one for me. And I walk the walk, talk the talk, and it's safety through and through. And like, when you walk away, you know you've had an impact. So, so if I've got to walk the walk, because that's my belief system as a lean practitioner, as a coach, and ethically, morally, I've got to do it for my own benefit, for my own sanity, for my own value beliefs and systems. But when you see that flowed down into, or flowed up into directors, MDs, that they're doing and you catch them saying the same words as you, and you think, I'm making an impact here. But as a leader, as a leader, there's a way to do things in there, and you can be very, very direct, very D style, and you'll get to an outcome, and you'll get to it by hook or by crook, by force of will. You'll get there. If you're D-styled, you'll get there by force of will. But there's a different way of doing it, that you'll get there, but you'll also coach somebody on the way, give somebody a belief that they can do something, give them some tools that they can do something, perhaps get them on a succession line there. There could be a next replacement, and then there's that level of altruism. They pay forward again because they like working for you. They're not afraid to come to you. It's not the big stick mentality. It's you helped me with this before, I'll go back again. but I'll go back with a solution, not just to ask for a question.
Yeah.
Ask for the solution. So I think, it's just a mindset, I think, in leadership. But yeah, I've worked with some great guys, mate, and I've worked with some, I'll not say it, but yeah, you know,
We've all been there. We've all been.
yeah. And
No, we've all been there. I think one of the things I did a workshop recently around mental health and identifying people in my team that would need support, that would need help. And we, as part of that, we did the DISC exercise. Everybody did, and it was a leadership course. And in the organization I work for, it was around 80% of people come under that D category, and I found that very interesting. And when I looked at that later on, I myself am a D, a clear D. You can smile. What do you think it is about the dominant character then that pushes them towards leadership positions, and what are they lacking in your experience? Because I've identified areas that I need to work on, and that I was lacking because I was very goal oriented and very competitive, and there are certain areas that I've now been working to develop. What do you think of the kind of key traits?
I think that 80% would a D style. I can see that, but some people use that D style. They want it as a badge of honor. You know what I mean? I'm a D, and I can walk. You know what I mean? Definitely, in my recent experience of leaders and MD leaders, it's becoming less so, I think. But you want a level of ambition and directness from your leaders. But it's that next bit on this thing is your situational leadership. So you can't be a D all the time to succeed. You need to be able to flex yourself out of that as situations arrive. And the trick is to be a D, but be able to go into the IS and C, dependent on the situation. You know what I mean? I can do the D style, and I really enjoy it, but I can't maintain it. I can't sustain it because it's not me. Ultimately, it's not me.
Yeah, and on the flip side, when I said people will wear the D as a badge of honor, we had to do this exercise. So every manager had to do the DISC exercise. And when I got the report back, I was almost embarrassed, right? Because I'm not joking. I had to go into this meeting and we were going to discuss this openly. And, there's levels of D and I was pretty high up on it. And I was almost embarrassed by it because the company I working for they put a huge emphasis on the culture there and the right kind of leadership. And I didn't, and that style of leadership, that high D leadership there isn't appreciated, but it is my natural form. So I'm on the other side of the, I can, and I'm still learning how to dip in and out of the other, and use these other traits. But if I'm not careful and under certain situations, I automatically gravitate back to my natural state, which is that D, which is something I've got to be very careful of when you're managing people and you're having these difficult conversations.
Nobody's perfect. I mean, I've sometimes the D comes out of me and it shouldn't do, and it's probably cost me my job a couple of times. You know what I mean? Because you can't. I'm just going to be direct now and tell you, and when really you should shut your mouth and walk away. But I think what I'm seeing as well, and my experience of really strong D styles, is that they tend to be a one-trick pony. You know what I mean? So eventually you're going to be found out that you jump from job to job. And in consultancy world, there's a few people like it, and you see them and they'll come in and I've had experience of it myself. They'll come in and they'll do the same thing, and they'll come in 18 months later and do exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
Because they haven't got like another aspect. Yeah. So they're not that balanced really, because they've seen one thing work, and that's the D style.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've met those leaders, and I've been that leader as well, Andy. To be quite honest, and through our conversations, as I said, it's definitely still a work in progress. And if I'm not concentrating, and if I'm not careful, as I said, I automatically kind of gravitate back to that position. But with training and with practice of that, it is effective. And that style of communication, it may work with 75% of people you're working with, but you're always losing, and the number might not be that, right? But it will work with a certain percentage, but you're always losing another percentage who are of a different personality type that won't tell you directly, but you've lost them, and you have no idea you've lost them. And that for me was the real eye opener of kind of being able to use these other traits as.
Yeah. And I think, you're really good at that self-reflection. You know you're a D, and you can be off the scale with it, but you pull yourself back, and you're consciously trying to do something or develop yourself to do something else. Where some D styles, yeah, I'm proud to be a D, and that's what I'm going to be.
A lot of organizations reward that. I've worked in an organization where the leader was, a clear D, and those who had that style were rewarded and encouraged, right? So coming out of that, and it was only through working with a more positive culture, and then working with yourself at the same time as that enabled me to really kind of look at myself in perspective. And I think this is the part of coaching and the value that coaching brings, that people aren't even aware that they need. They're blissfully unaware of the impact of their words and their style is having, and how more impactful they could be if they were to broaden their horizon.
Yeah. I recently went back to a site that I was there for a good four years. I recently went back to do something for it, and when I left, I realized it was a toxic culture, and so I needed to get out. So I got out, and that's the first time. Well, I started working with Tarek again, and then I went back, and I must have gone back 4, 5, 6 years later. I think I went back 6 years later, and although the people had changed, it was still a toxic culture. And it's like monkey see, monkey do, because they see somebody acting in that way, behaving in that way, getting promoted and rewarded for it. So they carry on, and they think that that's the only way to succeed, and it's not. And that's it. Yeah, I'm glad I went back, but I'm glad I'm not there still.
So because I think that rings true, right? And I've seen that in organizations, and I've worked in organizations where that's the case, and I've been victim to that, myself. I've seen those type of behaviors, following those behaviors, portraying those behaviors, and being rewarded for those behaviors as well.
Yeah.
So how do you go about changing that culture? How do you tackle that and change that culture? And this is a big question, right? But how do you go about entering an organization that has that kind of leadership style and culture in place? And how do you flesh that out?
It's a really good question, but it's one that, one of the businesses I used to work for, they used to run an internal culture survey. And I think they did it with Sharing Growth as well, didn't they? I think you had to do a culture survey to get on. So they look at the culture survey, and then they say, right, we're not listening to the people. We're not doing this. We're not doing this. We're not doing this. And then they give the actions to HR. You sort that out now. Culture's bad. Culture's ever bad. You sort that out. So they come up with a scheme, and culture doesn't change. Right, so they do another survey. It's worse. So they still keep giving it to HR. Culture doesn't change. You know what I mean? So this is where it links back. It's really full circle. if you want to change the culture, you've got to get your coaches on the shop floor. And if your coaches are your leaders, that's what you need on the shop floor. And you've got to have that dialogue. So say you've got 20 people in your senior leadership team, they should have opportunity and dialogue at least once a day with the shop floor, at least once a day with shop floor. And that's how you start to change the culture. But then it's, you said this, we did this. If you're asking for the feedback, you're asking for the feedback. And if you don't like it, it doesn't really matter. But it's your responsibility to do something about it because you're the leaders of the business. So I've written about this for me coaching stuff. And it's creating that environment where change managers in the business, cultivating the change managers first, obviously, getting them in a coaching mindset, because people put their hand up to be a coach and they could be the worst person, who you want to it. So there's a vetting process to happen, but making that engagement happen. And I know we never quite got it right at the site we first met at. But imagine your daily led accountability, your S2DCP, right? And imagine Alan attending one of those every day, taking feedback, listening to it. And, that's probably not the best example, because I think it did used to do the shop floor stuff because it's only a small site.
Yeah.
But if you imagine that on a bigger site where you've got people coming to your tier 1 meeting, asking how you are, what's going on, this is going on. Yeah, you've got a problem for me. Why is that in red? Is it something I can help with?
Yeah.
And that's how you change the culture. But it's not that's one of the ways to create an environment to do it. But
I've seen that firsthand. And the guy who was a group operations director, he came from Rolls-Royce. Very, very, very powerful and commanding personality. And as a group ops director, he joined the production boardwalk every day, 4 days a week. He traveled on a Friday and worked from home, but 4 days a week, he spent nearly an hour and a half of his day. It was a big shop floor, there were multiple boards, big organization. He would spend between an hour and a half every day on that production boardwalk. And he would be there until 6, 7 o'clock at night. Right? So he was obviously, the value he put in that was above and beyond his own personal time at the end of the day. And, the impact that had on everything in the business, the fact that, if someone had dropped the panel and damaged it, he knew about it and he would want to know how it happened, why it happened, and how we're going to stop it happening again. And just that person's presence there, it lifted everybody, because everybody on the shop floor, whether you were, at the bottom of the ladder on an apprenticeship, you were heard, your voice was heard, you had an opportunity to speak and to feed back into the guy that's second from top, and it has a huge impact.
That's it. And he's walking the walk, talking the talk.
That's walking the talk. Yeah.
That's walking the walk, talking the talk. And I've got another example. I used to work somewhere for 21 years in a local engineering firm, tier one supply chain to Rolls-Royce. All the guys we used to work with, they've left and they've gone to this another place that's local, and they think it's fantastic. And that's because the MD does exactly what you said your guy were doing. Every day, he talks to every single person every day. And this guy was on a machine who I know is still there. He says, I can't believe he does it, but he does it every day.
Yeah.
But it shouldn't just be that person's responsibility. There should be, if there's 20 on the senior leadership team, 20 people need to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm with you. And I think there's a growing precedent of working from home. And I see that with leaders in organizations as well. How do you think that is going to affect an organization when there's a lack of that presence on site?
I think there's a place for working from home, definitely. Yeah, but if you've got anything to do with operations and that interaction with operations, and you care about your culture and your people, so you need to be there. And if you're doing 2 days at home, that's fine. But your 3 days at work must include that leadership walk, that leadership coaching.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Yeah, there's a place for it. I'm sat on fence, Lloyd, on that one.
yeah. Yeah. The work from home could do a whole podcast on that alone. I definitely see the benefits of it. I get a lot of value out of working a day a week from home and having that time without the constant interruption. But aside from that, I think your presence is really missed, and productivity is can take a dive when leadership are absent, because the team won't necessarily know you're at home and you've got your head down and they just know you're not about. And I think it can build a level of resentment at times.
Yeah, I think so. There's a place for working from home. Yeah, definitely. I go into the office. Every time I go into the office, it's an open office, and I find it really difficult to work. Even putting the headphones on, it's too much distractions. Yeah, whereas I'd never thought that I'd say that, because I love being on shop floor.
Yeah, yeah. And we mentioned earlier on, how organizations are changing and leadership styles are changing. I think you're right. I think we'll see less and less kind of dominant styles, especially with larger corporations, and having that right balance in the leadership team. Because if everyone's a D, I don't think it's a good thing. But if there were no Ds, it's not going to be a great thing either. So leadership has been evolving over probably the last decade, especially. And I think I say leadership has been evolving. I think communication has been evolving, and people's ability to speak and be more honest. I'm thinking, how did this trend continue, and how do you foresee leadership evolving in the next 5 or 10 years?
Oof, it's a good one, Lloyd. I think I know we're rapidly entering the world of AI, aren't we? So but I also think that the investment and this is, from my experience in the last 15 years, getting good people is really, really difficult. Yeah. So what do you need to do to keep good people? What do you need to do to get good people first? What do you need to do to keep good people? The investment in human capital is probably going to increase. And it's not all about money. It's about working conditions. It's about rewards and recognition, which is not all about money.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think a coaching organization will encourage that investment in human capital, I think. And that's where I see the next kind of, there's a lot, you're not going to get good people and you're not going to keep good people unless you invest in those people. So some leaders might say, no, I'll just get AI to do everything. And and then, we'll see the outcome. But I think, it's high performing people are not prevalent in the world today. So how do we make them high performing? And that's, you've got to lead by coaching them, I think, and having a leadership coaching culture. Goes back to the culture question again. Leadership, coaching, and we haven't really talked much about lean, but there's a lot of tools that lean we can use for coaching.
Yeah. Maybe I have to get back on it. There's probably 15 topics that we could rattle on a podcast for each of them. I mean, very experienced, a very insightful person. I'm enjoying the topic that we're on, though, this leadership topic, and where that's going. And I think the psychology behind leadership, I think that's something that I've recently been paying, since speaking with you, paying a lot more attention to, and going from that drive to execute and complete your tasks and reach your goal to kind of reaching out a little bit more in a more calm and controlled manner. And I think that's had a big impact on me. And I know a lot of leaders that I worked with and work with could do with the same insights to really enhance an organization. But when it comes to leaders, if you could instill rather one practice into every leader, what do you think that would be?
Ask the right question. So when just don't lead, ask the right question. So it's that if you're on the shop floor, what's the question that gets the response that you think what you think you need?
Yeah.
Instead of telling people, ask the right question.
That's important. It's important. It's a skill as well. It's a skill as well that needs to be taught. I don't think it doesn't come naturally to everyone. I think it comes naturally to you. As you said, you've been, subconsciously coaching people for 20 years. And I think that's in your makeup and in your nature. And it's something that I've been practicing since speaking with you. And it gets easier, as opposed to having to really think about it and prepare for the moment. Then it starts becoming more naturally. I believe it can be taught. What's next for you, Andy? We haven't touched on what AJT Business Transformation is up to. So the website's up and that's looking great. I mean, really good design. I like that a lot. What's next for you and what excites you about the future?
Definitely the coaching. As I said before, it's really, really rewarding. Informally coached a guy about 4 years ago, and we've got him to the interview stage of the job that is his dream job now. So he's done part one of his dream interview for his dream job. He's going on holiday and he'll do part two, and is over the moon. You know what I mean? And he says, I want to pay you. I goes, look, you'll pay me back in karma when you phone me up and you say, can you help me here? I'll be charging you. But, we've done that like ad hoc for the last 3 or 4 years. And we've got him to a place that, it is really over the moon with. So it's getting those coaching clients, efficient coaching clients, to step away from kind of, at the moment, I'm doing like a lot of strategy, operations readiness, a lot of paperwork, thinking, finding objectives, and it's very, very PC based. Where I like that, I still like the shop floor. Right, we're going to set up a new structure. We're going to, coach, operational excellence. I still like that, but I'm trying to kind of dwindle that down and go to more to coaching. But I think that could be like a 2 or 3 year transition period.
Yeah.
For me, like, but I'm at the end of my career kind of thing. You know what I mean? So just getting, well, I think I am, but John doesn't. So if I can get, I think doing stuff that makes you happy. And I think the coaching is really, really rewarding. You know what I mean? So, and that I still love the interaction with people and groups. You know what I mean? Training. So I'm quite flexible.
Yeah.
My needs are relatively small.
Yeah. It makes a great impact, not only on people's careers, but it makes an impact on them personally, because you don't just learn something through a coaching session with somebody like yourself. You don't just learn that and only apply it to work. You learn to ask the right questions at home. You learn to respond and react to your spouse differently. You learn to father and parent differently. If you're self-reflective enough, it can have a huge impact. I still see there. I don't know. Maybe you can tell me if this is just kind of isolated incidents that I've seen. Well, I speak quite freely about coaching, and I've spoken to other leaders who it's been recommended, because it can't be enforced, of course, but it's been recommended that they join some coaching sessions, and they won't. I think, whether, I don't want to put words in their mouths, but my assumption is that they believe there's a bit of a stigma with it. I know I had comments thrown at me from when I'd spoken quite freely about it, because I saw it as a great benefit. The organization I'm with is willing to invest in me as a leader, and I'm put me through coaching. I saw that as a huge benefit. And then I kind of got comments back, that it was implying that it was almost a punishment, and that if you were better at your job, you wouldn't need this coaching. But that was some of the comments that I got, which is very interesting.
I think, when I did quite a bit of reading to do this course, and I think it might have been in that Goldsmith's, is it Matthew Goldsmith's book, What Got You Here won't get you there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And it was very much seen as a stigma, because Norway, it was a directive. You need coaching because your behavior is a type we don't like. So it was very much seen like, I think they put something on it about, in noughties, late 90s, noughties, very much seen as a punishment. But I think the tables have turned substantially since then. And and that's a really good quote, that what got you here won't get you there. Yeah, because you might be fantastic, but that's it now. Have you reached your ceiling? Yeah, if you're happy with that, if you're happy that you've reached your ceiling, don't do anything. But if you still want to, advance yourself, are you the complete article? Because I'm not, and I never will be. But and I think probably a lot of D styles think they are the complete article. But
maybe I'm not the typical D style then, because I know it's a significant work in progress. That's great. I mean, I feel that there.
But that's good. That's really good. Yeah, I think self-development. Why wouldn't you?
Yeah, I'm with you. I think that's a great point to end the podcast on. Andy, appreciate your time very much. I know how valuable it is. I know how busy you are, and I'm sure it'd be great to have you back on and talk about some other practices, especially lean as well, later on down the line. And I genuinely wish you all the success with your new business. And if there's anything I can do to help you along with that, I'd be very happy to help.
No, it's been a pleasure, Lloyd. Thanks a lot, man.
Thanks, Andy. All the best, mate.
Yeah. Cheers.